Ever watch a foreign film and notice the subtitles don't quite match the length of what the actor just said? Or maybe you've wondered how a hyper-specific, cultural joke somehow still lands perfectly in English. Well, in this explainer, we're going to decode exactly how professionals pull off that cinematic magic, using Gottlieb's 10 subtitling strategies. The absolute core of this whole thing is that good subtitling is rarely about literal words. It's about meaning, effect, and communication. If a subtitler literally just swapped French words for Spanish ones, you'd get an unreadable, confusing mess. It's a massive, high-stakes balancing act to capture the literal soul of the dialogue before the scene cuts away. To unpack this, we're going to walk this tightrope across 5 key areas: the subtitling tightrope itself, correspondent renderings, adjusted and reduced strategies, distorted renderings, and finally, choosing the right strategy. So, part 1, the subtitling tightrope, covering language, image, sound, and constraints. To really grasp this framework, we have to appreciate the brutal physical limits subtitlers are working under. And you can see that right here in Henrik Gottlieb's complete toolkit. Just look at all these paths. He mapped out these 10 specific strategies as a kind of master playbook for navigating the profession. But why do we even need so many tools in the first place? Because subtitling is what we call a polymedial discipline. It isn't just sitting down and translating language. It is a constant ticking clock battle against screen time, visual space, and human reading speed. I mean, you can only read so fast, right? And the screen can only hold so many letters before it literally covers up the actor's face. Let's move on to part 2, correspondent renderings, the perfect matches. This is the absolute easiest part of the tightrope. We call them correspondent renderings because the source text completely corresponds to the target language. Nothing is lost, full meaning, full effect, totally intact. But even in this perfect scenario, there are a couple of ways to do it. You basically have transfer or paraphrase. Transfer is your direct equivalent, like translating "I love you" straight across to "Aqua Minchin Taimo." But then you have paraphrase, where the wording changes to keep the exact meaning alive. Think about the English idiom, "he kicked the bucket." If a dramatic death scene was literally translated as "he struck the pail with his foot," it would completely ruin the moment. Instead, you paraphrase it to "dia meninggal dunia," which simply translates to "he passed away." Now, what's really interesting here is how easy it is to confuse the two. Both preserve the core meaning, right? But the key is the wording. Transfer keeps the literal form. Paraphrase totally abandons the literal words to make sure the actual meaning lands safely in the viewer's mind. Which brings us to part 3, adjusted and reduced strategies. We can't always have perfect matches. Eventually, we enter this gray area where subtitlers have to actively massage, compress, or adapt the text just to fit those crazy physical constraints we talked about earlier. To pull this off, they might use dislocation to save the tone or condensation to save space. With dislocation, the expressive effect, like the absolute exasperation in "you've got to be kidding me," is perfectly captured by a snappy local equivalent like "yang beneraja." Condensation, on the other hand, is just your everyday space saver. "I'm going to get something to eat" takes way too long to read, so it becomes "I want to eat." The core message totally survives, just in a much tighter package. Next up is part 4, distorted renderings, the sacrifices. Eventually, the constraints just become too tight and something has to give. This is the painful reality of the medium. Characters talk over each other or deliver rapid-fire dialogue, and it forces a distorted rendering, meaning an actual, unavoidable loss of information. Here, a subtitler might use deletion for something minor, like cutting out a conversational stutter, such as, "Well, I think," so you can just read the main point. But then there's resignation. This is when the meaning is entirely lost with zero compensation. If a joke relies on a highly localized, centuries-old rhyming pun that simply does not exist in English, the subtitler basically has to wave a white flag, translate the literal, unfunny surface text, and resign themselves to losing the joke entirely. To put that into perspective, look at condensation versus decimation. Condensation is a harmless trim. Decimation is a brutal cut. If an actor delivers a massive, fast-paced monologue and there's only time to read 5 words, the subtitler must decimate the text, leaving noticeable gaps in the narrative just to keep up with the frame rate. So let's wrap up with part 5, choosing the right strategy. How do subtitlers make these impossible calls without ruining the film? Well, they use this master tool right here, the decision tree. This flowchart turns gut intuition into logical deduction, so we can systematically classify exactly what is happening under the hood of any translation.
By asking these diagnostic questions in order, you pinpoint exactly what was kept and what was lost. Step 1. Was anything lost? If no, you've got a perfect transfer. If yes, move to step 2. Is the wording changed but meaning preserved? Boom, that's a paraphrase. Step 3. Was a totally new form created just to save the comedic effect? It forces you to look at the function of the dialogue, not just the vocabulary.
And a massive reminder here, never, ever judge a translation by literal words alone. People constantly look at a subtitle, see it doesn't match the dictionary, and yell, the translation is wrong. But hey, if it made you laugh exactly when the original audience laughed, that wasn't wrong. That was a wildly successful dislocation. For those of you studying film or language, using this step-by-step process means you're analyzing these constraints scientifically. You fully grasp the source text first, then you weigh the target text on the scales of meaning and effect. It completely transforms how you engage with international media. So keep this framework in your back pocket. Next time a character fires off a huge rant and the subtitle is just a punchy 3-word sentence, ask yourself, was that condensation or decimation? Did they use a brilliant paraphrase or hit a wall of resignation? Pay attention, and you might just find that reading the bottom of your screen is actually a thrilling high-wire act.